Out front now, the Republican Congressman Mike Lawler of New York. And Congressman Lawler, obviously, you'll be there. Talking about prices, we're looking at a market that in the past 2 days has plunged, 1,200 points. And after the markets closed today, Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, went on Fox News and said, well, we're not backing down, but maybe we're going to meet in the middle, and we're going to announce that tomorrow, and essentially cutting these tariffs in half. Congressman, do you think Trump is looking for an off-ramp at this point from when the Commerce Secretary said that 18 hours after those tariffs went into effect?
No, I actually think short-term tariffs can be an effective tool to negotiate fairer trade deals, and in the case of Mexico and Canada, really focus in on the flow of deadly fentanyl and migrants. If you look today, border crossings are down for the month of February to just over 8,000. A year ago, under Joe Biden, they were at 189,000. So you've already seen some level of cooperation from Mexico and Canada, in large measure because of the threat of tariffs. So as a short-term negotiating tool, I do believe it can bring about some significant change, and that is necessary. The markets, obviously, day to day, there's going to be ups and downs along the way. But I do believe as a negotiating tool, that is important. When you look at, for instance, Japan, the fact that U.S. cars can't go into the Japanese markets, when you look at Europe and the price controls that are put in place on U.S. drugs, part of the reason why we pay such high costs here in the United States on prescription medication is because of price controls in other countries. So getting our allies to actually engage in fair trade should be a goal of all of us in Congress. Nobody in Congress should want the United States to be being fleeced by other countries.
Of course. I mean, some of the perhaps unintended consequences, since you mentioned Japan, since they're not party to this, would be that all of a sudden their cars just got 25% cheaper than cars made in the North American area, as is how cars are definitionally made now, with parts going back and forth between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. And it is that
but a
point.
lot of car manufacturers are in the United States, and that is something we should certainly want. Advanced manufacturing to come back to the U.S., which frankly is part of what tariffs can help do. The fact is, if you buy a U.S. product, you're not paying a tariff on it. It is obviously for imports.
Well, except for a lot of U.S. cars, and in most cases, the majority of their parts actually do come and go between the U.S. and Canada. So that would be privy to these tariffs.
That is part of trade. But again, to me, this is a short-term measure that should force a reset amongst countries to have fairer trade practices with the United States. And every member of Congress should want that.
So let me talk to you about some of those members. In fact, your Republican colleagues, some of them do not seem to share your point of view on this at all. In fact, they have, when talk about some of these pain, the tariffs could cause average Americans. Some people have been, a lot of Republicans we're hearing have been calling and complaining to the White House today, all day, about these tariffs. Do you know any of those people who have been upset, or has anyone talked to you about that?
Well, of course, there are businesses, for instance, in my state of New York, that rely heavily on trade with Canada. And again, to me, as a short-term leverage point, it is necessary. You can't threaten a tariff and then not actually utilize it if you're trying to force a negotiation. If it's just an empty threat, well, then it's not actually going to result in any long-term gain. And frankly, for Canada, whose trade imbalance is significant. I mean, they rely heavily on the United States. Their GDP is based in large part on the United States economy and trade with the U.S. So, look, long term, it is not something that I think should remain in effect. But in an immediate short term, to force better and fairer trade practices and force Canada and Mexico to take a much tougher stand on the issue of deadly fentanyl flowing into our country and illegal immigration, it's important. I think the facts that border crossings for the month of February were down to just over 8,000 speaks volumes when a year ago they were at 189,000. Democrats kept telling everybody we needed to pass that bipartisan immigration bill through the Senate that would have codified Joe Biden's catch and release policies into federal law, which would have been a disaster. This, in fact, what President Trump has done is actually reduce border crossings, and I don't hear Democrats saying anything about that.
Well, I will say, of course, when you point out there was a bipartisan bill, and on the Republican side, led by the ultra-conservative Senator Lankford, in terms of making that deal.
Yes, but it would have codified catch and release into law, and that would not have been good policy.
All right. Well, Congressman Lankford Lawler, I do appreciate your time. We'll see what he has to say about all this tonight if we do move forward on where those tariffs are going over these next 12 hours. Thank you.